a presentation on the perfect raw diet? Because I've read the Clear Middle Real Good for Cats and Dogs book, but I don't think anybody else would have.
Sure can. Alright, just a quick summary on bones then, just quickly. So, bones are Mother Nature's toothbrush for dogs and cats. That action when they chew a soft, meaty raw bone, it's that abrasive action of the teeth lining up that basically cleans their teeth. So, you know, you can do that if you really want to be a dedicated owner, or you can feed them a bone and let them clean their own teeth. I know which I prefer. As I said, as long as you feed the bone sensibly, you get that. We do see some problems. Dogs with really malocluse jaws don't always have that nice opposing action, so you will find you'll get dental disease even if they chew bones in some breeds, because they simply don't have the scissor action in their mouth. But that's good old mankind breeding terrible animals. Bone supply, as we talked about before, the most readily available source of calcium is raw bone. Better than what you get in the jar. Stool doping agent. Love that picture. You know, you've all seen, if you've seen dogs eating bones, the big firm white poos that they leave behind that basically dry out in the sun. But they're big firm because the bone material comes through in the faeces, and that's a great stimulus for anal gland function as well. That's what basically happens in the wild. One thing we forget, bones covered in cartilage. Cartilage, what do we call nowadays? Glucosamine, chondroitin sulfate, all of these wonderful ingredients for treating arthritis. Naturally, they all come from cartilage. So dogs in the wild would get their fix, they'd get their pentazan and their shark cartilage and all the other things that we can feed them naturally, because they eat that articular cartilage off the end of all the bones as part of their diet. So we tend to forget that. Try and match the bone. I always basically remind people, no point feeding a huge bone to a small dog or a small bone to a large dog. You know, a large dog will inhale it without chewing it. A small dog won't be able to chew it. Some of my favourites. So these are things that I've used over the years pretty happily. Chicken wings. Elaine is a big fan of pulling the skin off. She's worried about salmonella. Fair enough. But if they're acidic environment, the stomach's okay. It's not a problem. But if they're eating dry food, it can be. Whole chicken frames. I can tell you what, small dogs can knock over a chicken frame, whole carcass, without any trouble at all. And of course, you've got that huge, see that there, that big piece there, that's all cartilage. Cheapest form of cartilage known to man is the keel of the chicken frame. Whole rabbit. There's a picture here of a bunch of puppies just tearing apart a whole rabbit. You know, as soon as they've got their teeth, they can rip into them. Kangaroo tails out brisket, which is the sternum. Turkey necks becoming a little more popular because they're bigger, so bigger dogs can have a chew on a turkey neck versus a chicken neck. Yeah, so just restating the obvious there, that you need to make sure they can chew it, because that bone is going to be on the lawnmower pretty quickly. And as a visual example, why do we chew on bones? Well, that's what their mouth should look like, and that's what we see in practice. You know, that dog's going to lose that tooth, it's going to lose that one, it's going to lose that one. That one doesn't look too bad, but basically all your last premolar and all the molars going to go in that dog, and it doesn't have to be that way. And reminding ourselves, it's natural. There's the, as I mentioned before, there's the cat chewing the head off the rabbit. Exactly what they do in the wild. Very small cat, very big rabbit, still managing to chew through it. Puppies can do it. They can do it really well.
That cats can pull down an animal 2.5
times its size. Yeah, they're very effective at doing that. Dogs do it, cats do it, bones do it. So there you go, quick one for bones, basically. So what do we want to look at? Sorry.
Now you showed us what not to do, but you've got one on the perfect what to do.
What's in natural diet? I can do that. This might be a little repetitive. So
have you read Clear Middle's?
Yeah, I mean, look, everyone has different ideas. I probably have gravitated away. I used to have probably a bit more carbohydrate in my diet than I do now. And that's purely just reflecting that my opinions have changed over the years, and I think you need to be mobile and able to readjust. So when we talk about natural diet, we're trying to mimic a diet. You know, I mean, there's people like Tom Lonsdale that will tell you just go out and collect roadkill and feed it, which is fine. You know, whole carcass, bones, meat, everything in there. It's not practical. It's nice, but it's not practical. And I think we need to be making things a little more palatable for consumers. Otherwise, you won't get there. So what we need: meaty bones, raw meat, carbohydrates, which we'll talk about below, some vegetable matter, and supplements. And I'll just go in quickly. We've done bits, sorry, I'll flick through that. Let's do that again. Just duplicating a few things. So just quick things. I mean, I like to try wherever possible to free range or organic meat. One of the nice things we have about in Australia, kangaroo and rabbit, both, you know, if they're wild, they are free range and organic. Certainly kangaroo is always free range organic because they don't farm in Australia, whereas you can get farmed rabbit now. Preservatives is an issue in fresh meat in the pet industry. I mean, there's no control over how much preservative, it's usually metabisulfite that's added to meat to stop it. It makes it basically look nice and red and fresh, and it can be turning green and sour. And cats won't eat it, but dogs will happily eat it full of preservative. So there is a simple test you can do. Malachite green is a dye that you get in an aquarium. You use it to kill fungus in fish tanks. Put a drop of dye on the meat, mash it around a bit, it'll go green. It should stay green. If it's loaded with preservative, you can look at that for 5 minutes, it'll actually be nice and bright red again, looking like meat. All the dye will be leached out by the preservative. So it's a really simple test you can do to make sure that the meat you're buying is not chocked to the eyeballs with preservatives. Again, let's not forget organ meats, really important. 10% of every meal should be based on organ meat. So primarily liver, kidney and heart are the safe ones that obviously don't want to be messing around with offal and bits and pieces from the gut where you can get parasites. I always recommend buying them from the butcher so that you know they've had a pre-mortem and ante-mortem inspection. It's nice to try and match the meat source to the potential prey. So I like feeding cats as a general rule. I like rabbit, I like free-range chicken, I like small animal size because it's more likely to be a tray. Feeding beef to a cat in some ways, you know, makes me think, oh, it's not likely to be pulling down a cow. With a lion, that might be a different story. Things to avoid. I'm not a big fan of production poultry, apart from the ethical, which is the old Jamie Oliver there doing a great job trying to remind people that doing that to chickens is pretty awful. Most production meats, and that includes pork, are really poor nutritionally. If you think about it, chickens, and most people may not know, chickens that you buy in the supermarket are 6 weeks old. That big, 6 weeks old, grown in a shed, no little sunlight at all, no green grass, just a pelleted ration, usually with a low-grade antibiotic of some sort to try and control. I'll go back to the other one. And a lot of these birds can't even stand up. The calcium deficiency is so bad in their bones that they can't support their own weight. So if you think about that, number one, if you're feeding that bone for a source of calcium, you're probably diddling yourself. And secondly, the nutritional quality of that meat is going to be poor. Now, as a human, you eat it once a week, no biggie. But people tend to choose their meat source and go, I feed my dog chicken, and it's chicken 7 days a week. So if you're feeding a really poor meat like that, you can't expect to get the benefits of a raw food diet if you're feeding a highly deficient meat source. Okay, biotin, sorry, that's what we were talking about before, raw eggs. So things to remind ourselves, too much liver can get vitamin A toxicosis. Freshwater fish is the one that has thiaminates. And that principle of vitamin deficiency with raw eggs, as I said, I think to be worked out, you need about 17 eggs a day before you start affecting vitamin levels. So I like raw eggs, I think they're good. But again, what I've tended to find over the years, I used to reduce meat protein in senior dogs. I don't do that as much anymore. I actually find that they do better on the higher meat, so I tend to go down as an adult. But as you start to see their body shrink, you need to increase the protein, not decrease it. That was based on what I was taught at school, that protein was going to be bad for their kidneys and their liver and we should reduce it. The reality is if you actually increase it when they start to shrink, you put the body condition back on. So I have to change that one. When you start feeding raw meat, straight on it. As soon as the dogs have cut their milk teeth, so as soon as you can put your hand in their mouth and feel the sharp edges popping through, that's the same time when it gets uncomfortable for the bitch, when they're chewing on the teats and they're hurting her. That's when she starts vomiting up food and feeding them in the den naturally. So that's the time to introduce it. As I said, look at these guys, these are 6-week-old Pharaoh hounds. Absolutely demolished that that whole rabbit in about 10 minutes. So if people say, oh, they need to be raised on Pharax and wheat bix, it's like carnivore, carnivore, they're meat. That's what they want. Even a little guy like that's having a fair old crack at that, although it's a totally inappropriate bone. So this was just touching on that whole concept of gastric acidity. So as we're talking about there, pH less than 2 is what is normal for a dog that's eating a high meat diet. On a high grain processed diet, between 4 and 6. So there's a huge significant difference there. I mean, if you want to prove to yourself what happens to raw bones, get a chicken neck and just get a cup of vinegar. pH is about 1 to 2. Put the bone in it. See what happens to it. It actually dissolves. It becomes like gelatin, just all soft and gooey and digested. If you put 3 times as much water as vinegar in and you end up with a pH of 4 to 6 and put the bone in, nothing happens. It just stays like bone. So this is why we see so many dogs puking bones or getting obstructions, is because their stomach can't handle the product that's going in. And yeah, the whole controversy over meat protein. Again, pet food does not declare what the source of protein is. You get 26, 28, 30% protein. But is it meat protein? Because it should be if you're feeding it to a carnivore. The reality is there's an awful lot of substitution of protein. A lot of plant protein is being used in processed food because it's cheaper than meat protein. But carnivores do not process plant protein in the same way as they process meat protein. So it's a bit of a no-brainer, but unfortunately, and there's no way of telling. You can't read a packet unless you're really good at reading the ingredients, and you can work backwards from that and figure out that there can't be that much meat in there. So we talked about there, transition, 7 to 10 days basically, so you allow the gastric acidity to catch up. Carbs. So again, as I said, still quite a fan. Rolled oats, always been my favourite. Pretty cheap, easy to prepare. Big difference, don't cook them. No need to cook them. You soak them overnight in water. Basically, all the grains that I've ever used are all raw, whole grain and sprouted. So completely different. You're trying to match how they would come from the stomach of the prey animal, not flours cooked at 260 degrees at 55% of the diet. So the big difference between carb, no carb, gluten, no gluten really comes down to we should be just talking about how much and how are these things prepared and presented to the animal, which is really important. When you soak grains,